Okay, 1 minute to starting. I hope everybody is ready. Great.
That's it.
Okay, I think we should begin. I'll just start us off with a word of prayer. There's a mic that's on. Blessings, hello. If you could mute your speaker, there's some background noise. Thank you. Okay, let's start off with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, this morning we come before you. We say thank you for this new day. We ask that you may be with us through this meeting, that all that we talk about, Lord, may it be giving you glory, Lord. We thank you for this beautiful day that you have given us. Thank you for bringing us here together as we learn from each other, as we discuss these things, oh Lord. May you give us a spirit of unity and understanding. Be with us from this moment to the very end. In the name of Jesus, I do pray and believe. Amen. Okay. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Because I was just alone.
We can also see you.
Okay.
You are visible.
Okay. So welcome to this webinar. This is a SheLeads webinar, SheLeads project webinar, powered by Zion Publishers. We arranged this in honor of Women's Day this year. We just saw that there's a need to have these conversations, especially because we are a project that is meant to empower women. So it was very necessary to be able to come on and have a conversation and steer a conversation about women for women. I will probably invite Mr. Dorsal to come in and maybe just share a few things about the project before I begin to introduce the panelists. Mr. Dorsal, could you come on?
Hello, good morning. Thank you so very much, Joanna. I'm so glad to be here today. Let me know if I can be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm not sure.
I can see you.
right. I was just wondering where the echo is coming from. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I'm not sure my video is clear enough. You could help me know if I am visible and
You are.
audible.
You are.
I will try to adjust my video as we move on, but I will just make a comment before we start. I'm so glad that we get an opportunity this morning to have this conversation that is brought to you by Example Publishers in partnership with the SheLeads project. I'll just make a brief comment about the project and why we are even gathered here this morning to deliberate on the issues that are before us today, and importantly, why we are even engaging the panelists that we have today. My name is Doso Radido. So I work with Example Publishers as the operations director, and I also coordinate the SheLeads project activities. SheLeads, as the name suggests, is a project that concerns itself with issues of women and women's leadership, their involvement in leadership, and importantly, the question of how best can we maximize the resourcefulness of women, tap into that, promote their ability to contribute to the growth and the progress that we aspire to see in our society. And this is actually inspired by the fact that there is an increasing realization that there is a huge untapped resource among the women that we need to be tapping into and working with. And one of the ways to do that is to be able to build the right systems, the right structures, the right mindsets, the right culture, the right capabilities, and level the ground up for the participation of as many resourceful women as can be. And that should be able to translate to value, both for the immediate and the long term. So SheLeads is a project that begins its journey by drawing insights from the experiences of those who have been in positions of leadership, positions of influence, that have had an opportunity to operate in those spaces. And we are interested in picking insights from the experiences because we are bound to have a stronger basis of argument when we speak through the voices of those who have been there before. And the reason why this is very important is because it's been a struggle for the African woman really to be who she's supposed to be, because we are coming from a background where a lot of women were just there to be seen and not heard, and not so many people really understood what it really means to be in their shoes. People spoke on their behalf, people made decisions on their behalf, people made recommendations on their behalf, people came up with interventions on their behalf, thinking that they are working something that really connects with them and that speaks for the issues that concerns them. But we have come to realize that that is not the best approach to dealing with that, and therefore the need to hear their voices or to include their voices in the conversation has now become very, very important. So from the insights that we pick from the experiences, we build a body of literature. Building a body of literature becomes very important because it helps us to bridge one of the most important gaps that has existed in our space for a long time, which is the literature gap. We have struggled really with consuming literature, opinions, perspectives, and philosophies from other parts of the world, and trying to customize that within our context. A lot of times we don't get it right because it doesn't connect with the realities on the ground. And therefore, there is need for us to build literature that speaks about our story, that talks about our experiences, that connects with the realities of what we're experiencing here, so that from this body of literature, we can create reference points. So next time we are talking about what it means to be a woman leader, what it means to experience leadership in this space, we are informed by experiences that are drawing from the realities on the ground. And as soon as we build that literature, we use it as a basis for conversations like this, in the hope that we can be able to come up with interventions that helps us to bridge some of the gaps that we are dealing with. And in my mind, one of the biggest gaps that we have to deal with is the gap of really understanding who women are and the power, the resourcefulness in them. And then number two, to really address the question of representation and inclusion, so that we go beyond just counting heads and assuming that because we have 10 women there and 10 men there, that we have sorted sorted the issue. Sometimes it goes beyond the number to a place where we are raising questions. How much of that number are we really listening to? How much are we really giving room to be able to contribute what we need? And to be able to fix some of these gaps, it will need the participation of all relevant stakeholders. But we have to have a basis for the conversation, a basis for the argument, a basis for the thinking that we are trying to engage in. And that is why building this literature is very important. Once we have had a conversation starting, and a webinar like this is one of those conversations, because as you will soon realize, half of the panelists we are going to engage today are actually women, and they're actually involved in the project, because we want to hear their voices about the issues, so that today, as we celebrate International Women's Day, and as we talk about inclusion, we are asking ourselves the question: what are the best, most effective strategies that we can put in use to be able to realize this whole conversation around inclusion, and listening from the voices of the women who have been in leadership, who have experienced inclusion, whether in a good way or in a bad way, is one of those very important things that we have to do. So the project concerns itself with amplifying the voices of the women, drawing useful insights from their experiences, and using what is building from that literature to speak to certain existing gaps with either recommendations or interventions that can help us fix that. As we do this, we are hoping that we should be able to speak to policy issues where policy is supposed to be spoken to, because we know that policy provides a very important framework within which things must happen. And most of the time when we get the policy right, we are most likely going to have an overall structure within which the right things can happen. After addressing policy, we also must move to the place where we are able to address what we call leadership practice. How are people implementing these leadership insights or these leadership strategies that we are talking about? How do we put that in the context of our culture, in the context of our understanding, and in the context of the realities of our environment? And then thirdly, we also hope to speak to the issue of how best do we address the question of building necessary leadership capacities, because after everything is said and done, the people we are fronting for leadership, the people we are fronting for certain positions and certain assignments, they must be able to have the capacity, the capability to deliver. Because if they don't deliver, then they frustrate every other effort that we have put in place. So this conversation today is hoped to speak to some of those issues, and importantly, to be able to challenge, inspire, and enlighten the members of the audience who will be in the meeting today, or who will listen to this conversation even after this session is over. So with that, I want to hand the meeting back to John, and I'm hoping to have a very exciting time today, engaging with the thought leaders that we have as members of the panel, and of course, members of the audience that are going to be part of this conversation. So as much as possible, let's make it lively. Let's make it exciting. If you have any issues, this is the floor. Let's talk about that and see how best to empower ourselves and push the inclusion agenda forward. And as I finish, I must thank the men that are in the meeting, and especially in the panel, those who believe in this, those who support this, and importantly, those who have seen the value of this, because you are among the very key stakeholders that must help us to move the needle in the right direction and help us to win. And I believe if we win together, we win in a big way. Thank you so very much, and have yourselves an exciting time. Back to you, Joanne.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dosso. Thank you so much for speaking to us about SheLeads. And I'm sure now we are all a bit more aware what the project is about, who is it for, and what we are planning to do, what we hope to do, and the impact we're hoping to create. So before I begin introducing our panelists, I think I just have one question for each of us. Is we're celebrating women. So which woman are you celebrating in your life today? It could be someone you know, it could be a public figure, a social media influencer, it could be anyone, but I feel like we should all be reflecting about the women we're celebrating today. It could be more than one. Let's all remember them in our minds and even reach out and just let them know that they are worth celebrating. Yeah, so just getting ready to introduce Dr. Caroline so that we can begin. And maybe we could hear from maybe Mr. Dosso. You could tell us if you have a woman that you're celebrating.
Oh, thank you so very much. My mom is one of those very important women that I celebrate, and I have a reason why I celebrate my mom. When I was young, one of the most important things my mother did was to wake me up in the morning. So there is no single day she let me spend the whole day in bed. And one day I asked Mom, why do you wake me up? When I didn't want to wake me up, she got very dramatic. She would pull the blanket, pour cold water on me. She had to make sure that this guy is awake. So when I asked why she was very insistent on waking me up, she told me, you cannot live your life asleep. So every single day, you must make sure that you are awake to be able to experience life. And when I woke up, I have never gone back to sleep. So I know that one of the most important things for you to really live an effective life is to wake up. So the waking up she did for me is a lesson that I've carried up to now. And there are many other women who have woken me up. I have teachers who woke me up in primary school and in high school. They woke me up. I've worked with women bosses who woke me up with opportunities and woke me up with challenges and woke me up with a reminder that, you know what, you can do this thing, you can be great, you're a person of value. So my mom and my teachers and my mentors and all those bosses and friends that injected value in my life, I salute you on this International Women's Day. You are very important people. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Maybe people could also put in the chat also. Just let us know if there's a woman you're celebrating as you keep joining, and I'll put the question in the chat as well. So Dr. Caroline, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, Joanna.
Thank you so much for coming today. I think you are a frequent face here for the SheLeads project. You are always here to support us. We thank you so much for that. I think you can take the floor. Not sure. I don't think you need an introduction. I feel like you are one of us. So take the floor, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joanna, and of course the SheLeads project for having us, for organizing, this, very, very important topic. By way of introduction, I'm a certified coach, a speaker, and trainer. I've worked in very many leadership positions in the corporate world. And of course, I'm very passionate about first leadership in general, but also specifically also leadership to do with women. And my passion, of course, comes from my experience, the way I have traveled the journey of leadership, the things I have encountered. And of course, a very firm belief that women have a lot to contribute, and not just women. Let us just say everybody from their different perspectives. When it comes to leadership, people have a lot to contribute. I've also encountered the difficulty of leadership. Let me also say this. We speak so much about inclusion and leadership, but also leadership is a difficult experience and this is the case for whoever is leading, wherever you are. It's always a topic which it's not scientific, so you cannot say, from a science perspective, what is good leadership. It is not artistic, so you cannot say from an art perspective what is leadership. So leadership is a difficult thing in itself. Leave alone the issue of inclusivity and diversity and all these other things that surround it. So my own approach is, of course, to begin with the aspect of leadership as something that is, quite important, something that affects other people, something that adds value, something that creates change in other people, but just moving more towards clarity on leadership. This is an important, foundation and an important discussion, because without that missing piece, even the issue of, inclusivity does not really come into place. So having said that, I wish to turn now to today's topic, which is inclusivity. Discuss it broadly and also a little bit specifically with respect to women. And I want to start by speaking about teams. A leader must really find a definition for teams, must find a way to define what is a team. So leadership and teams is a very related topic. So you cannot speak about leadership and almost immediately not speak about teams and teamwork. And when you talk about exclusivity, even from my own experience and my own perspective, is that it is very, very critical to define what is a team. So even before one goes into exclusivity, even before one goes into exclusivity and inclusivity and diversity, it's important for every leader to come up with a team definition. And certain words will stick out when you come to define your team. And the issue, first of all, of complementary skills is very important. So for you to have an effective team, for you to have a good team, then the issue of complementary skills, of course, is quite important. And the other issue is the issue of common purpose. A leader, in the definition of a team, must also clarify what is the common purpose for this team, because that's really what brings a team together. And leadership is a question of creating common ground for everybody. And also the issue of accountability is very important when you are discussing teamwork. What are the levels of accountability in a team? So diversity and inclusivity finds its place within a team. And therefore, the definition and the construct of a team is so important. This is not cut and paste or the definition fits all, but any leader needs to be clear and to sell the vision of what is a team, so that anything else that follows then has a reference point. And in this case, we are talking about inclusivity. The reference point of inclusivity is team spirit, teamwork. And that's, of course, very important. Now, you cannot sell something unless you are also convinced about the benefits. So even before we speak about, being inclusive, about diversity, we still have to visit the basics in terms of what are the benefits of inclusivity. And one of them is knowledge. Diversity or different perspectives bring on the table knowledge. So if a team excludes diversity, then there is a knowledge gap. There is something that team is missing from a knowledge perspective that they need to bring on board. So selling the vision of inclusivity also involves being very clear that for there to be good performance, for there to be effective performance, then the knowledge gap needs to be expanded, because with the more knowledge a team has, the more effective, the more efficient, the more they're able to tackle whatever is ahead of them. So setting the vision of inclusivity involves the issue of knowledge gap. Do we really want to have more knowledge than we already have? If we create even further and further inclusion and further diversity, does it expand our base? So that's a very important, benefit. And of course, the issue of perspective. If you are in a team that has the same perspective, if nobody is challenging what the team is doing, if nobody is challenging the processes, the ideas, the interactions, the items that are before the team, if you don't have dissenting voices within a team, then you are losing a lot of perspective. And we must, of course, acknowledge that whatever we are developing from a leadership perspective requires the different perspectives that are there. So lack of diversity creates a gap of perspective. And this therefore does not enrich the performance of the team, does not enrich the results of the team, does not enrich the outcome that the team is looking for. So we really must be convinced from a kind of vision perspective that, different perspectives actually enrich, the outcomes of the team. And then we have the benefit or the advantage of what you call experience. And because people are different, then their experiences are different. And if you have a team that is so uniform, that is composed of like people, like genders, like thinking, like personalities, basically then you're missing what you can call the human experience. Because in this world, different people, because of their very nature or their very orientation, they experience the world differently. And therefore, if you exclude them from a team, that creates an experience gap. So I'm coming from the point of view, or I'm pushing the idea that the vision on inclusivity should also bring about the benefits of inclusivity. Because when you're convinced about something, then it doesn't become very difficult to do it. So I think the idea is really to look at the benefits. What would be the benefits of inclusivity? The other thing about inclusivity, whether you call it gender inclusivity, personality inclusivity, is we have to go back to the drawing board in terms of why is it that people do not embrace inclusivity? Because if you are trying to cure something, you really have to go back also to the ground, to the basics, to the, to where did it come from? Where does it come from? And if we travel the road now of why is it that something that looks very logical is also very difficult? Why is it that something that looks so beneficial, people don't embrace it? And we really have to go and cure where it is coming from. So one of the things about inclusivity is that people fear conflict. And people fear working with people who are different from them. Now, that difference can be gender, this is men and women. That different can be personality, that different can be age, that different can be anything. So what is there about human nature is that people are more comfortable with people who are like them. Because when you are with people who are like you, then the idea of conflict does not really arise, because you are thinking the same, you are doing the same, you are walking the same, you have the same perspective, you have the same. So the idea here is for us to cure inclusivity, we have to confront the fear of conflict and say, is it possible that this is what is the genesis behind lack of inclusivity? Is this a barrier to diversity? And what are we afraid of when it comes to including people? So at leadership level, people must confront the fear of conflict, the fear of different opinions, the fear of different perspectives, and see which is the best way then to handle conflict, so that when we say we be inclusive, then people naturally follow what we are saying. So for us to sell the idea or the vision of inclusivity, we have to talk about unhealthy conflict, either in the working environment in whatever environment you find, even in society, we have to start the discussion of what is unhealthy conflict. And unhealthy conflict means people are taking differences personally. If somebody tells you something, you say, they're saying this because I'm a woman. So you take it personally. Or if a man is told something, they say they're saying this because I am a man. So the idea of taking things personally is something that we need to teach ourselves, because this reduces conflict, this improves inclusivity, this improves diversity. The other thing is personal baggage. People have to keep on finding out, am I reacting from a historical perspective? When somebody, and this happens all the time in a working place, you find that somebody is giving somebody an innocent comment, and then this person takes it in a completely different direction from what was meant before. And what is it? That person is reacting, is recalling things that happened to them, is recalling other interactions, is recalling other comments, is recalling times when they were put down. So now, anytime somebody tries to tell you something, you think they're putting you down. Anytime somebody tries to comment on something, you say, they're saying this because I'm a woman. That's not the case necessarily. So you have to think, what are the personal baggages you are bringing on board? Because that will not improve, dealing with conflict. Then the issues of retaliation are things that also come from unhealthy conflict. People want to retaliate. You do this, I do this. You do this, I do this. You do this. So those are not good signs or signals that can foster inclusivity. And the quick conclusions, we also have to learn that when we are in a diverse team, when we are working with different people, let's not be so quick to make a judgment, so quick to conclude that so and so say this because of this and this, or this is where they're. No, it may not be where they're coming from. So quick conclusions is something that doesn't work well with diversity, or doesn't work well with conflicts. Now, the other thing is being expressive when it comes to conflict. We need to begin to learn that it's good to communicate. It's good to have a conversation. We need to start understanding what is a good conversation. How do we start a good conversation? How do we express ourselves in a way that actually reduces conflict, actually embraces diversity, actually embraces even where other people are coming from? How do we hold conversations that can actually bring out different perspectives, can be more accommodating? Yeah. Then the other thing about conflict is sometimes people are so focused on themselves and less focused on solutions. In a diverse team, for us to have inclusivity, we have to learn to keep our eyes on solutions. So sometimes diversity breaks down because people are just like, what is in it for me? What does that mean for me? Where is this going? How will this affect me? It's all about you. But in a diverse environment, people have to improve more on solutions. What solutions can we bring on board? Can the common ground keep this team together from inclusivity and diversity perspective? So the issue of solution orientation, solution thinking is quite important in inclusivity and diversity. And then also the other thing that makes conflict even worse is when people become territorial. This is my territory. This is my place. These are my boundaries. This is my working place. So I think we have to learn to improve on, creating our own territories, creating our own kingdoms, creating our own divisions, creating our own departments. And we have to really move beyond that. Instead of defending territory, we have to be more about how do we include, how do we become more accommodating, more diverse in this team. So unhealthy conflict is an enemy of diversity. And if you check mostly, when you go to your working life, you'll find that inclusivity fails from the perspective of unhealthy conflict. And this is something we have to confront, because you cannot cure something unless you acknowledge where it is coming from. So we have to go to the bottom of unhealthy conflict. And then we have to paint a picture in a team when it comes to diversity of what we call healthy conflict. And we have to give people the vision of impartiality, of being not looking who is contributing, not looking where that person's gender is coming from, their age, their personality, impartiality. We have to paint a picture in leadership of equality, impartiality, that everybody has a right to contribute. And the healthy conflict also desires to know the person. For us to cure lack of inclusivity, we have to develop interest in other people. You have to become curious. How do women process issues? When we say women are emotional, what really are we talking about women? Being emotional, does that mean that this person is not competent? Being emotional, does that mean that this person is not right thinking? Being emotional, does that mean that this person is not analytical? Where are they coming from? So the idea of curiosity, the desire to genuinely know people, where they're coming from and what they stand for, is very, very important. And then looking for a solution, critical in creating inclusivity and diversity, and being helpful in creating a culture of helpfulness, where people are really volunteering in terms of how do we move things forward? How do we create solutions? How do we create a common ground? How do we create motion? So the issue of having a vision of healthy conflict is very important in inclusivity and very important in diversity. And also teaching people about seeking understanding. A diverse team cannot work well together unless everybody embraces understanding. Understanding really means that you have to be genuine about knowing, where people are coming from, what people are thinking about, what drives people, what people value. I mean, that is something that we need to nurture in a culture of inclusivity and diversity. And then, of course, becoming part of the conversation, sharing is very important. And this one, you have talked about solutions. And then being open or flexible. We have to kind of convince people about the issue of openness. Prejudice needs to be addressed. Why do you think people are different, so different that you cannot find a common ground? Okay, people are different, but can there be a common ground? So challenging people in terms of being flexible, opening new territory, having a wider way of thinking within the environment is very, very important and makes the team better. So the issue of conflict, we cannot ignore it when we are talking about inclusivity and diversity. The other thing about inclusivity and diversity that we have to consider is practically, we have to open our networks, our personal networks. The more people you know that are different is very, very important, because some of our orientation is something that is so deeply embedded within us that we need to go through a process of trying to regain our perspective of inclusivity and our perspective of diversity. I'm sure we have so many stereotypes in the mind. Whenever you're in a team, you're looking at someone, you've already concluded what kind of person that is. You have already concluded where that person is coming from. So, and this is because we do not have wide networks that include other people. So in our working environment and in leadership, we have to really appeal to people to open their networks. And this requires humility, intentionality, energy, time, and love. We have to ask people, go out of your way and interact and have people in your network that are completely different from you. Move away from just the familiar, the normal, the people who are like you. Go and seek out other people in terms of personal networks. And this is something that should be practiced within a working environment and out of a working environment, so that truly and genuinely we start moving towards inclusivity and diversity. Because if we don't do it from a process perspective, then it's going to be very difficult to achieve it. There's really not going to be any switch and conversion. Then we have to deal with our prejudices. Everybody has to go back, and there's nobody who doesn't have prejudice. We have to go back to our data bank in terms of our mind and ask ourselves, what are the prejudices you hold about people, about gender, about age? What are the stereotypes that you have created that even before you engage, even before you interact, you have already made a judgment that this is such and such a person, this is such and such a leader, this is such and such a. So we have to be willing and we have to be genuine enough to really accept. I don't believe there's anybody who doesn't have prejudice. It's just that you have not confronted it. You have a way of, prejudging people. You have a way of packaging people. You have a way of, accepting or not accepting people. You have a way of being suspicious or not suspicious. So the idea of prejudice is something that we need to do soul searching and ask our teams and ask the people we interact with, just to interrogate, how much prejudice do you have about this or the other? And then, of course, difficult to accept, but lack of inclusivity, lack of diversity comes from arrogance. And arrogance in the sense that you believe that you are better, that you can do things better than other people, that you're in a better position than other people, that you can think better than other people. And it comes from a place of almost looking down on people, like they are not enough, like they are not as good as you are, or they cannot be as good as you are. So arrogance is something then we need to talk about. Where does it come from? Because if we don't cure the underlying issues to inclusivity and diversity, it's really not going to, be well. Then what are some underlying issues? Some other underlying issues are what you call personal insecurities. And I don't know anybody who is not insecure, but it's a question of how do you keep overcoming your insecurities? And one of the ways you can overcome your insecurities is to focus on other people, not just on yourself, is to give other people a chance, is to believe that there is enough for everyone, is to have an abundance mindset, that the fact that somebody else is succeeding doesn't mean you're not going to succeed. But we need to look at personal insecurities, because that is what makes us sometimes exclude people and not give people a chance, or keep people in a box that they can come out of that box. This is a woman leader. So she can come out of this box. So the idea of dealing with ourselves and understanding that sometimes our reactions are coming from our own insecurities is very important, and therefore to kind of come up with a different approach or a different belief system in terms of insecurities. I will not go so much into this, but we can also talk about the newer and the older generations. The young people are much, much better at inclusivity than the older generations. If we go down in the age brackets, we'll find that actually the younger people are much more comfortable with the inclusivity, with the diversity. Actually, some of them are even taking it to a different level altogether, because there are some who really don't see what is the difference, and they are going to a different side altogether. So sometimes the barriers of inclusivity and diversity are more about the older generation, and we need to face this and therefore begin to define where we need to be changed, where we need to change in order to be actually more inclusive. Now, to improve on inclusivity, of course, is to create a culture of sharing in whichever organization you are in or corporate. Create a culture that of interaction, of people sharing different ideas and perspectives, and this needs to be something that is actually entrenched in the culture. That people need to mix ideas and come up with a broader base. And then, of course, we need to have a bigger definition of what is diversity, what is inclusivity. Are we talking about equality, or are we talking about equity? And we need to have a big discussion on this, because sometimes we are just ticking the box. We are saying we want just to be equal. Is this really equality, or is it equity? And there's a big difference between equality and equity. We can't be equal. A woman cannot be a man cannot be a woman. We are different. So how can we create equity? And that means meeting people where they are. Meeting people where they are and customizing solutions so that they address the unique things about where people are coming from. So a big debate again, not just ticking the box about equality, about what are we really looking for in this. So again, the other thing is to provide a solid leadership for diversity to be effective. I spoke a little bit about leadership. And if the leadership is not strong, then very little will work in terms of whatever concept you're looking at. So I think the issue here is for leaders to take the idea of leadership seriously, to have a good and detailed definition of what is solid leadership, so that the same then can provide a good foundation for diversity. And the minute you have strong leadership, obviously that is looking at things like problem solving, idea creation, about decision making, implementation. Then the issue of inclusivity, diversity becomes even a natural conversation. It becomes a natural thing to do. And people are able to understand that diversity, of course, is good when it comes to problem solving and creating ideas. A leader needs to understand that. But there's a downside of diversity as well, because unless you are a strong leader, if the team is diverse, decision making is going to be a problem. Implementation is going to be a problem, because people will be coming at it from where they're coming from. Like, I need to, you have to include my, opinion. You have to include my idea. And when it comes to implementation, everybody will be saying, I'll do it my way, I'll do it this way. But the idea of leadership is now creating a balance between getting problems solved and creating ideas, and also now being quick to make decisions and implementation. The two must be balanced. The two are children of diversity, the two are children of inclusivity, and the two belong within diversity. But strong leadership is a big cure to any of this. So I want now to start signing out, and I've talked about the barriers to diversity, and of course, some of the solutions that can be there within a working environment when it comes to diversity and inclusivity. And because the other panelists, I want to cut it there, and I want to thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much, and this is what I have to share for today. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful, Caroline. Thank you so much. So before I let Dr. Caroline go, just let you all know that Dr. Caroline is an accomplished strategic leader with over 30 years of experience in the insurance sector, inclusive of over 15 years in executive leadership. She has contributed to the development of East African insurance sector through leadership roles in various industry bodies. And she has been associated with success in several insurance companies such as AAR, Madison, and Old Mutual. She also has 15 years of board experience as an executive director, and she's served on other East African boards in the region. She has a passion for development of people, and she's a certified executive program leader for Maxwell Leadership Team. Currently, she's a lecturer at the Riara University and chief executive of GBC Consulting. As you can see, she truly knows what she's talking about. She's been in the industry for such a long time. She's seen all forms of inclusivity and non-inclusivity. And I really liked the point on the older and the newer generation, because as a young person, coming into the job sector has been a continuous learning experience, because I really have met prejudice about young people, especially Generation Z, how we like our boundaries, how we are always complaining, and it's very important to realize that we have these prejudices and to work on them, so that we are not really portraying them and reflecting and displacing them on every person that we meet. Thank you so much, Dr. Caroline, for that. If anybody has any question, we'd like you to put them in the chat so that we can have them for the Q&A session. As we go into the next person, we have Mr. Otumbo Vincent. I hope he is here and ready. So I'll just introduce him while he comes on. Mr. Otumbo is a dynamic and catalytic management leadership consultant. He's a beacon Oh, hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
I'll just introduce you so that we know who we are talking to. He is a catalytic and leader. He's a catalytic management and leadership consultant. He is a beacon of leadership development, employee engagement, and organizational growth, with a profound passion of inspiring change. He's an accomplished public speaker, delivering transformative keynotes and moderating discussions that resonate deeply. At the heart of his mission, he is an executive leadership coach who exemplified his work in a book called Embark. He is a co-developer and lead coach of the Confident Leader, an executive leadership development program tailored for senior leaders, entrepreneurs, and business owners. He is a driving force behind Serve Skills Limited, a leading
Is it me or did we lose Joanna?
I think we lost her.
Seems like we have lost her. I don't know if you can hear me.
all his masters in Mombasa and the Rotary Club as well. And he even got awarded for the best coach for in 2021. Overall, he is not just about consulting. He crafts narratives for empowerment, for resilience, and triumph. And his story is one of leadership, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of potential. In every endeavor, he is igniting the spark that propels can everybody hear me? Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah, we lost you, but it's okay. That sounds a very long introduction.
Well, you have done quite a lot and means you know a lot. So I believe now everybody knows who you are. So you can take it away now. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to say I want to appreciate Dr. Caroline, who has spoken before me, for the great insights that you've given us. And I want to appreciate all of us who have created time to be here in this conversation, whether on YouTube or live here in the call. That is Radido, Emmanuel, Dua, Emma, Mercy, and Blessings. I think for apart from what has been read to you, I am very passionate about building leaders, not followers. And I'm very passionate. When I started Serve Skills, I was after building people. So I was building the person. But then as we graduated in the business, I realized you can build the person, but if they live and work in an environment that does not enable their kind of growth, still it's a wasted investment. Therefore, then we had to review our strategy to build the person and build the organization so that both of them can operate from a point of the same wavelength. And that is why we do leadership development, soft skills training, team building, and all that. And on the other side, for the organization, we do management consultancy in strategy, business process reengineering, policy development, as well as little bits of HR here and there. But today, we are talking about effective strategies for leadership inclusivity. Allow me to share my slides. And I want to begin by defining, I know everybody has defined what leadership is, but for today's conversation, I will want to use the definition by General Montgomery, who says that my own definition of leadership is this: the capacity and the will to rally men and women to a common purpose, and the character which inspires confidence. When we look at the definition of leadership according to the general, there are a few keywords that I pick. Word number one is the capacity and the will to do what? Rally men and women. That is a point of inclusivity there. And then you are rallying them to a common purpose. And as you do that, you as the leader must have the character to inspire confidence. I feel like if we lived by this kind of definition, I know like John C. Maxwell does define leadership as influence. As simple as that. Everything rises and falls on leadership, yes. But then I find this definition thought-provoking because it talks about, if today I call myself a leader as Otumbo Vincent, the first question I need to ask myself, do I have the capacity and the will to rally men and women around me to a common purpose? If I say yes, then I go to the second part. Do I have the character to inspire confidence to the men and women that I have rallied to this cause? It is until we redefine what we see as leadership that we can be able to achieve inclusivity. But until we build the character and the confidence to rescript what we know, we will still be having the same conversations a decade from now. We will still be having the same conversations a decade from now. I want to go further and say, what then does inclusivity mean? When I was looking at it, 3 points came into my mind. Point number one is that inclusivity means having equal opportunities to participate, contribute, and advance in the marketplace and in leadership roles without facing discrimination or barriers based on gender. So you and I, female or male, deserve equal opportunities to participate, contribute, and advance in the marketplace and in leadership without facing discrimination or barriers based on gender. Number two, inclusivity means being valued and respected for your skill, for your experience, for your perspective, and having your voice heard and represented in decision-making platforms. It means that I, as Otumbo Vincent, I need to be valued and respected for my skills. If I say I'm a leader, if I say I'm a public speaker, if I say I'm an author, I need to be valued and respected for those skills. I need to be valued and respected for my experiences. My experiences may not be necessarily like yours. That is why you are, for example, Joanne, and I am Otumbo Vincent. My perspective does not have to be yours, and yours does not have to be mine, but we need to value and respect each other for the strengths that we bring to the table. And then your voice and my voice needs to be represented in the decision-making, a boardroom or platform. Then lastly, which is my third point, inclusivity means creating a supportive and empowering environment that recognizes and addresses the unique challenges and barriers leaders face in the workplace while providing equal access to resources, mentorship for professional growth and advancement. And now we ask the most important question. Why must we talk about inclusivity? Why must we talk about inclusivity? So I have this exercise I would like us to really engage with one another. So I'm going to ask a few of us. I think we are a few. Each one of us should be able to participate. So I'll begin with Radido, who is one of our hosts here. And I want to ask, I'm avoiding your first name because I don't want to butcher it, how it is pronounced. So Mr. Radido, what do you see on the screen? There is a photo that I've projected. I will want you to tell me anything unique you see on the screen. What do you see on the screen?
I can see a photo of what looks like one-horned hippo trying to paint a picture of something that looks like its own horn, and the background that is there, a tree and something like that. That's what I can see. I can also see tiny images on the lower end.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Joanne?
Well, I can see the hippo, but it's trying to paint the sunset, but because of the horn, it can't really, it's including its horn in the painting. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Caroline?
I can see a hippo painting with a very big horn.
Okay, thank you. Emmanuel?
Same to me, I can see a hippo and I can also see trees at the background. Yeah.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Dua?
I thought it was a rhino. So I see a rhino that's painting a landscape, but it has its horn included in it.
All right, thank you. Emma? Or Emma?
I can see a rhino painting, and it's painting the sunset, and the background is the trees and all that. He's trying to paint all that, but he's including the horn.
Thank you. Mercy?
Thank you. I can see a rhino with a paintbrush and paint. I'm not sure that he or she is the one who's painted that picture, but I can just see him holding a paintbrush and paint, and there's whatever that's already painted here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mercy. Blessings.
Oh, I can see trees in the background, and there is a painting of there are three paintings of what is in the background.
Thank you. Blessings. Linus?
Well, I can see a rhino and paint, I think a sunset on the background, but then there are also other two pictures that are already painted there, which I think maybe the rhino seems it's not accurate of what the rhino is seeing.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your participation. I really appreciate. Now, this is my final request. This is my final activity. Is it possible we put our videos on? Kindly, if you are able, put your videos on. I like your beautiful and handsome faces. I'm wondering why we are doing the session without our videos on. So I'm gonna ask you to take your right hand up. Take your right hand up like me. And then unmute. Take your right hand up. And then I want you to bring it in front of your eyes like me. And I'm gonna ask a question. I want you to give me a chorus yes or a chorus no. So our hands here. Are you able to see the screen in front of you clearly with your hands raised in front of your eyes? Are you able to do so?
No.
No.
If you want to see your screen clearly, what do you need to do?
Remove the hand.
Remove the
Remove
hand.
the hand. Okay, now I want to go back. Let's go back. Let's put our hands here. Those who said you saw a rhino, it was indeed a rhino. And what you are seeing, your hand right now, it's a horn. So if right now you were to draw at the end of the day of the picture, you will draw part of the laptop, including your hand. And this is what we call a rhino horn. The reason why we must talk about inclusivity, it is because we always don't see people for who we are. We see them from our rhino horns. And it is until we remove, now we can remove, our rhino horns that we get to see people for who they are. They get to see us for who we are. And then together we can collaborate. I strongly believe that the way God created man and woman, he created them to complement and complete each other and not to compete with each other. But every single day, we are competing and we are fighting instead of complementing and completing each other. And one of the reasons we have to have that conversation is because of our rhino horns. So now if you feel you wanna go back to hiding mode, please do so. Please do so. No more activities. Thank you so much. But I want to go back to the slides and I say that the reason why we have then to continuously talk about inclusivity, it is because of our rhino horns. And our rhino horns are informed of our prejudice, our stereotypes, our judgments. And I can give you a simple example. If today I came to your office looking for a job and you heard the word Munene, you heard the word Thuranira, you will not see me for who I am, you will see me from my tribe. So apart from gender inclusivity, there is even tribe inclusivity. So inclusivity in leadership is becoming a very serious conversation that we need to have. And it is because of our rhino horns, the prejudice, the stereotypes, the judgments, the assumptions that we have, and misplaced expectations. And when we see people from our rhino horns, this includes even age, it includes experience, it includes class. Whenever we see people and see each other using our rhino horns, we head into fighting. And whenever we start fighting, we remove transformational conversations from the table. All of us react instead of responding to one another. The second reason we need to discuss why we need to discuss inclusivity is the culture. The fact is, I was raised in Africa, in Kisi, and I was raised in an African culture whereby girls, for example, were to stay in the kitchen and prepare food. While me as a boy, I will go tend to the cows, and later on in the evening, I'll sit with my grandpa or my father on the same table waiting for the ladies to bring the food to the table. And when the food comes to the table, it is my grandfather or my father to serve first before everybody else serves. That is the culture that we were brought up in. So it becomes very difficult. Waswahili, you know, the Swahili people say that samaki mkunje angali mbichi. So if that is the culture we grew up in, then it means the older generation are going to have a tough time. It means a 60-year-old has to actually rescript himself to inclusivity. And that is the environment that he was not brought up in. And therefore, when we talk about inclusivity, we need to give each other a little bit of grace for us to grow, to transition from a culture and probably advance ourselves to an inclusive culture. So we need to understand our roots. The reason why we talk about inclusivity in every angle, be it leadership, marketplace, business, and all that, it is because of how we were brought up. We were brought up in, you know, what we called role segmentation, that this role is for this role is for this role for this, and therefore we have to rescript it. And for us to rescript it, we need to have intentional conversations where we don't fight with one another, therefore bringing enmity, but we have conversation on how we complement and complete one another when it comes to various aspects of our lives, be it leadership, be it marketplace, business, and career development. The third thing, it is parenting. We also live in a culture where we as parents are busy looking for money to take our kids to good schools. It means we are even lacking in parenting. If we are absent, how are we teaching our daughters and our boys inclusivity? Or are we again creating a problem for the next generation? The last thing, which is number 4, it is that all of us have become very sensitive. And we are sensitive because at the end of the day, we are all humans. And we are sensitive because we have complex brains and emotions. When you read the book Who Moved My Cheese or watch its video, we have 4 characters. We have Sniff and Scurry, and we have Hem and Haw. When all of them wake up one day and they don't find cheese in the station C, Sniff and Scurry, they move on to venture into new territories in the maze. But Hem and Haw become very difficult in adapting to change because of their complex brains and emotions. And I believe that is why Dr. Caroline was saying that sometimes we have baggage. So every other feedback we get, we don't see it as feedback, we take it as criticism because we have some baggage we haven't dealt with and we have to take things personal every single moment. We are too sensitive to have difficult discussions. And that is why even relationships are becoming a very big problem. And people are taking toxic content and therefore they cannot sit with each other and have a concrete constructive discussion on how we can achieve inclusivity in leadership and the marketplace. Then the question becomes, how do we achieve inclusivity, having laid that foundation? The first thing is that leadership impact, your leadership impact. Let me mention names so that I make it very personal. Your leadership impact as Gradido, Linus, Emmanuel, Dua, Dr. Caroline, Joanne, Emma, Blessings, and Mercy is whether you are male or female, is directly proportional to your level of exposure, your continuous learning and development. It means even after today's conversation, you are going to be a different leader who is going to be enhanced when it comes to leadership inclusivity than the person who didn't show up for today's conversation. Strategy number 1 for achieving leadership inclusivity. we need to rescript and redesign who we are as individuals, as organizations, as societies, and as nations without losing our identity. We need to stop borrowing ideas of what inclusivity is. Inclusivity does not mean westernization. Inclusivity means we have leadership conversations and bring ourselves to the table without losing our Africanism, without losing our identities as Africans. It means we need to rescript our education. We need to rescript our culture. We need to rescript our exposure. We need to rescript and redesign our parenting so that we are able to engage on inclusive discussions in leadership from even our own children as they grow up. We need to rescript. The reason why somebody will become very sensitive and take things personal, it's because this person is not taking responsibility for themselves in the equation. If there is a challenge, somebody needs to take responsibility for that and then rescript it. When you rescript issues and put healthy boundaries, you don't have to take things personal. Number two, we need to hold deliberate and intentional transformational conversations together, not segregating ourselves as women, segregating ourselves as men, but we need to sit together and have transformational conversations and find our spaces together. Number three, we need to stop competing and invest in building leaders by complementing and completing each other. I remember it's called Greg Rochelle, one of the founders of Life.Church, the guys who have built the YouVersion Bible app. He has talked about 6 types of leaders. And one of the leaders he talks about is the empowering leader. And empowering leaders don't create followers. Empowering leaders create more great leaders. They produce more leaders. And that is why we need to ask ourselves the things that we do, the conversations that we hold, the posts that we post on social media, are they geared towards creating and producing more leaders? Or are they geared towards people fighting one another, being offensive versus defensive? Strategy number 4, for us to achieve inclusivity, we need mind shift. And we need to learn that when it comes to success and growth, it is not unlike poles attracting each other like the way we learned the law of magnetism. When it comes to leadership, when it comes to success and the growth of the society, value attracts value. Look, when I look at the late Wangari Maathai, this is a lady who found her space and became the best in class. And today she's a case study of what a woman leader can do. When you look at talk show business, look at Oprah Winfrey. She's the best in class. When we talk about innovation, look at Steve Jobs. He is the late, but he's still best in class. We still talk about him. We use him in our training. We use him as a case study of what a leader can do. And that tells you that when it comes to success in leadership and the marketplace, the moment we build our values, inclusivity conversations gets out of the window, because for you to actually to have value in the marketplace, inclusivity is part of that formula. But maybe because we don't focus on building value and becoming best in class, then we start talking about ingredients of succeeding instead of focusing on the success. What are the next steps? We need to understand the law of the farm. If you are a farmer, you understand that there are seasons of planting and harvesting. If you are a farmer, you understand that there are types of soil, loamy, sand, clay. And you must understand the types of crops that grow in that farm. It is important to understand that as we engage in conversations about inclusivity, we must contextualize it to the African culture. We must understand the type of soil that we have been, and therefore hold conversations that will manure and plant seeds of inclusivity, and understand that consistency of these conversations, consistency of pruning, consistency of manuring these conversations is the only way that can get us to achieve that inclusivity. It's knowing that this is a conversation that one-time conversation is not going to lead to inclusivity, but we need to consistently have constructive conversations for us to be able to achieve inclusivity. It means that we need to understand our seasons and give ourselves time to grow one day at a time. You don't plant maize today and harvest it tomorrow. It takes time to grow. And as it grows, there is a part that you play as a farmer. The second thing we need to understand that nature is evenly distributed. And every time we mess with the equilibrium, we'll fight to get that back. I can give an analogy of when you're an entrepreneur, actually, I am one, I rarely get time to rest. And what happens at the end of the day, the body itself shuts down. You experience something to do like a burnout. The reason why you are experiencing a burnout, it is because you are not adhering to the laws of nature that God himself created. And therefore, an imbalance has to be created, and the imbalance is burnout, so that you can rest and achieve the nature's equilibrium. It means that as much as we are having inclusive conversations, if we go against the principles of life the way God created it, we will always be fighting about inclusivity. So sometimes life is simple, but because we are humans and we have complex brains and minds, we complicate it. We can simply achieve inclusivity by adhering to the laws of creation. And that is found, I'm a Christian, so it is found even in the first book in the Bible, which is Genesis. Can we adhere to the laws of nature? You can plant, you can build a house near the ocean, but at the right time, the ocean will claim its place. And that, the ocean claiming its place, it is a lesson to you that nature is evenly distributed. You disturb her equilibrium, it will come for its own equilibrium at the end of the day. Last but not least, for us to achieve inclusivity, we need to become impeccable with our words. Impeccable means flawless, lacks sin. And I believe this is where we are failing in terms of achieving inclusivity. Go look at social media. If you are a parent, ask yourself, the type of conversations you hold, the type of content that you share on social media, your mindset and your attitude, is it shaping your own children, the upcoming leaders, to value inclusivity, or is it driving them to enmity and fast fights and strife? So I feel we as leaders, you and I, we need to become impeccable with our words. We need to breathe inclusivity. We need to lead inclusivity, and we need to be able to contextualize the conversations that we have. It is good to borrow ideas. It is good to go and benchmark, But at the end of the day, content without contextualization is failure. So let us contextualize our conversation and know that we are living in Africa and we have our African culture. And I believe that is why nowadays nations have started what we call culture tourism. It is because every single day we are adopting ideas and losing our own identity and not becoming impeccable or authentic with our steps to success. So I'll pause it there, and I believe we are going to have more conversations, but that is the foundation from what I feel like if we address some of these issues, especially our scripts, then we are able to achieve inclusivity. Thank you, and back to you, Joanne.
Thank you so much, Vincent. That was extremely wonderful. I really like the part about the rhino horn. I didn't see it leading there, but it's very informative, very inspiring. I also really like the idea of the empowering leader who is creating leaders to people who lead, not just followers. I think it also goes back to what Dr. Caroline talked about, creating, valuing solutions over valuing yourself, and being a person who creates people who are bringing in solutions. And I think that really speaks to inclusivity as well. And also the part about children, I didn't, about raising, parenting and raising children who see examples of inclusivity is a very new to me, and I think some of us have really learned some new things. So thank you so much, Vincent, for that. We will definitely get back to and see if we have more questions about what you've talked about. So we go to the next panelist, who is Dua Muradbika. Hi, Dua, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'll just introduce you before you begin.
Okay, I'm just gonna start getting ready, so don't worry.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so Dua is a seasoned leader with over 2 decades of experience in driving organizational growth and empowering women through coaching and mentoring. As an ICF and commenter member, she specializes in strength-based leadership. She excels in integrating modern technologies to enhance operational productivity and fosters cohesive relationships. Her expertise extends to facilitating adult education and delivering keynote speeches at prestigious events. With a background in project management, stakeholder engagement, and diplomacy, she has served several leaders in leadership roles, including as the country lead for Girls, Malawi, and recently she was able to achieve a lifelong goal of contributing to SheLeads book volume 4, which showcased her commitment to women's empowerment and leadership development. So that's about Dua, and we're so excited to hear from her. So Dua, take it away.
All right, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Inclusion is being an inclusive leader is something that's very important to me. I'm a mother of 2 Gen Z, one who feels she's more millennial than Gen Z, but of 2 Gen Z, I am a mentor to many more young girls, and I also say I'm a professional auntie. So I deal in this space a lot. As a leadership executive and wellness coach, I deal not just with the systems that need changing in DEI and diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I also deal with the leader as a person. So that's why wellness is something that's very important for me. I believe wellness is important for leadership. So getting back to inclusion, when we speak of inclusion, we speak of ensuring a safe space where people have belonging, support, and respect. And so in an inclusive environment, every individual will feel valued and all voices are heard. So for me, being inclusive as a leader means at every stage of the job cycle, women or other marginalized communities are supported. This shows up in how and where the job is advertised, the language used in the recruitment process, how and why candidates are chosen, interviewed and shortlisted, how they are onboarded, how talent is developed, and eventually promoted or becomes part of a succession plan. At any point, there can be issues of inclusion or lack thereof. And as we know, we've spoken, if you've seen some of the reports from McKinsey & Co., which does more of, it is an American research organization, but it does give us a benchmark to understand. And I really hope that soon African, as we build our literature on leadership, we will have more statistics for the African situation. But it talks a lot about the different things that happen to women, whether it's the broken corporate ladder rung, whether it's women trying to break the glass ceiling, or whether it's women finding themselves out on glass cliffs, as they call them, where, you know, a situation where a minority or woman is in that they can't win. And often this is done when there's been a big scandal, then they bring in someone to take over. And unfortunately, there's no way they can win in that situation. And so that's around the space that I talk a lot about and deal with a lot of the ladies that, a lot of the women that I coach and mentor. We also talk a lot about microaggressions and micro-exclusions. So let's start off here. So when I got the call, when I got the message back that I could present today, I sat and I thought about what is inclusive leadership, you know, because we had said that the title was going to be Strategies for Inclusive Leadership. So I was like, okay, so what is inclusive leadership? And so inclusive leadership is going to counter discrimination, bias, and favor based on ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, age, social economic background, religion. And we know in Africa, then there's also tribal issues, which city you're from. And, you know, there's much more categories that we can put there. So when I was looking at inclusive leadership, I saw inclusive leaders as leaders that support effective decision-making, diverse talent, and collaboration. Why is this important? Well, it motivates and drives teams towards individual and shared success. Leaders who tend to effectively leverage their team's diverse ideas, experiences, and thoughts and perspectives do so to the benefit of their companies. Businesses that employ inclusive leaders are often likely to attract and keep highly qualified talent, develop creative solutions, and find ways to appeal to and benefit to diverse consumer markets. In the past few years, McKinsey & Co. they do a survey called Women in Business. And one of the things they noticed is what they called the Great Resignation. So in the United States, and especially around the world, there's been a lot of women leaving their corporate jobs. And the reason for doing that is the microaggressions and the micro-exclusions, not feeling included in the processes that are important to them. What women were finding is often the role of DEI was given to women. However, they were not being included in the decision-making. So there's been a great resignation. One of the things that's also important about being an inclusive leader is that it requires commitment and vulnerability. Now, vulnerability in leadership for some people is a very novel idea, because if they're thinking of the vertical type of leadership that we'd see when we were growing up, whether it's and especially in Western literature, you're thinking of somebody of Winston Churchill or any Avengers superhero. Is that vertical leadership, one person going off into battle and everybody following them. So obviously that type of person, a general or etc., couldn't be vulnerable, because if you were vulnerable, it meant that you're putting yourself or other people in danger. However, we're starting to see that, especially here on the African continent, and especially with African women, we tend to lead in a more collaborative manner. And the very things that we've been told are not good for us in the past, like that we're emotional. Our emotion is often things like empathy that are mistaken for being emotional. And empathy is important, even in negotiation, and empathy is important. If you don't understand where the other person is coming from, then how do you know, how are you able to effectively negotiate? And so vulnerability becomes important, because if you're showing up as your true and authentic person, people believe in you. And if people believe in you, people follow you. So that's where the vulnerability comes from. Oftentimes, people mistake vulnerability for being very verbose. If I tell you everything about me, what I did all weekend, everything that happened with my family, that's me being vulnerable. And that's actually not what this type of vulnerability is about. It's about authenticity, showing up as who you are, saying when you don't understand something, getting clarification, listening actively, etc. So some of the top traits of inclusive leaders. Well, inclusive leaders usually have strong soft skills that allow them to successfully integrate an inclusive type of management. I teach and train on a lot of soft skills and coach around soft skills. I actually now call them essential skills, because just the fact with emotional awareness is when you find a leader who doesn't, and I don't know how they lead in this day and age, but if you find somebody who wants to be a leader and they don't have emotional intelligence, it's very hard to deal with them, because it means, first off, they're not self-aware. They're also not regulating their own emotions and feelings, etc. And so then that spills over to how they lead. So some of the top traits of inclusive leaders is bias awareness. First thing, we've got to be aware that we have a bias, okay? And actively listen and encourage diverse ideas and ways of thinking. Equality needs to be a priority in our business decisions, our goals, our vision, and our relationships. Active listening. I always say active listening is listening to understand rather than listening to respond. Most of the time, the type of listening we're doing is we're already formulating in our brains what we're going to say back to the person. So we're missing a lot of the nuances, you know what I mean? Because you're in your head saying, wait, they said that, so I need to reply this way, rather than listening for understanding, where you're repeating back, where you're paraphrasing, etc. And so curiosity, that's another big part of being an inclusive leader. This motivates people because people feel that, you're listening to what it is that they say. And this helps to drive improvements, innovations, and other key results in the workplace. Constructive feedback. And this one for an inclusive leader is a two-way street. As much as leaders, we want to give out constructive criticism, we've got to be able to take it as well. And this helps to improve our approach. It helps us to course correct, and it helps with new management decisions and to consider changing, the changes that we can make in the terms of the projects that we do, so that the work that we do is reiterative. It goes in constant cycles. And, once you correct one thing, you add it to the thing and you keep going, and we work in constant cycles where we change as we need to. Effective communication is another top trait of inclusive leaders. So one part of effective communication is that all team members should be able to offer input for others to consider. So it's not just about what we're saying, it's about giving everybody a voice. Empathy and compassion are important because we need to seek to understand others' perspectives, feelings, and ideas. The compassionate approach to communicating and working with others lets us consider all aspects of a problem. And this allows us to remain flexible with our team workers. So creative thinking allows people to provide unique and innovative ideas that are fundamental to the traits of inclusive leadership. Inclusive leaders are more likely to ask for input. They're also more likely to consider non-traditional ideas and approaches to things, to think, quote unquote, outside the box. And so the ability of an inclusive leader to think creatively and look for innovative solutions allows them to develop their strength as an inclusive leader. And finally, teamwork. And Dr. Carolyn spoke, it's next to last is teamwork. And Dr. Carolyn spoke about this in her amazing presentation. So I'll just do a small amount here, but teamwork is about collaboration and working with others, where all traits of inclusive leadership when directing and managing a group of professionals. Inclusive leaders, especially that work part of teams, learn to lead, delegate, and direct their teams in a manner where everybody is included. So the final thing is cultural knowledge. And I believe my predecessor, Vincent, spoke about this as well, about understanding. And so inclusive leaders are aware of and sensitive to their team's cultural diversity. It's important to find top talent and create innovative solutions and approach work with new ideas. So cultural knowledge allows us to recognize the cultural differences of others and find ways to adapt and embrace the diversity of the workplace. And another part of cultural knowledge is being able to move between various cultural settings and pay attention to the words and the experiences of others. So it's not necessarily that you're becoming a chameleon, but it's just when you're in a certain situation, you know, this is the way I show up. And when you're in certain situations, you know, this is the way I show up. This was something that was driven home for me as a former diplomat, because you have to adapt to the environment that you're in so that you can continue with the conversations. So inclusive language. When we talk about inclusiveness, sometimes we forget that it starts with what and how we say. Language is a very powerful tool. The words and the phrases that we use matter. I think if you sit and think back to your life, you may not remember maybe the times you were spanked, you know, or disciplined or whatever, but you sure remember the time that a parent or a loved one looked at you and said, "I'm so disappointed." Those words hit. So language really matters. It's important that we recognize the importance of our words and the impact they hold. What we may just feel is nothing, whether it's misgendering someone or it's using the wrong type of language, we may feel it's nothing. It can be a huge dig to someone that causes a break in communication and eventually a break in the teamwork. So one of the key factors in developing and fostering diverse, equitable, and inclusive organizations is to promote the use of inclusive language. This inclusive language is language that aims to include everyone. It's free from biases, it's free from limitations, stereotypes, and other forms of social exclusivity. A safe and successful environment requires us to think about how others will absorb the language that we use. We can't just say something and say, "Oh, I was joking." That doesn't fly in 2024. Language, and why is it important? It's important because language signifies acceptance. We want to make sure that everybody feels accepted, acknowledged, and respected. So let's look at some ways to make language more inclusive. One of the ways is for certain things, using what has become the norm is using gender neutral terms, such as rather than chairman or chairwoman, you say chairperson. The second thing is person-first language. Person-first language emphasizes the person before the disability. So you would say a person who is blind rather than a blind person. Neutral or preferred pronouns, you know, what has become the norm is to say they, so that it's not offensive to anyone. Avoiding ableist or insensitive language. Ableist and insensitive language devalues people with a disability, suggesting that the person with the disability is abnormal, i.e., we've seen in recent times, it is impolite to call somebody retarded. It's a derogatory term that mocks individuals with intellectual disabilities, using their condition as an insult. So as we said, language matters. So the final things I would say for inclusive leadership is we want to check our biases. We want to be aware of the assumptions that we have and strive to remain non-judgmental in our interactions with others. We want to remain open and positive during discussions, team meetings, and conversations, and commit to approaching things at work with positive intent to prevent or change behaviors or processes that are exclusionary. We want to engage passive team members, the ones who hide in a corner. We want to pull them out, engage the passive team members, and motivate them to feel confident and comfortable with giving input and feedback. We want to use creativity to learn. There's so many different ways. This is one of the amazing things about doing icebreakers before a meeting is it gets everybody in the room, everybody's relaxed, everybody has a chance to say something about themselves. So we need to create ways to learn about each other's differences, our cultural experiences and perspectives to foster an inclusive environment where everybody has the ability to provide insights and ideas. This is why team building exercises are really great because it gives people a chance to know each other on another level. And then, as I said before, being vulnerable, provide team and individual feedback to help coach your team so they can develop more inclusive behaviors and methods of working together, and accept your personal vulnerabilities and allow others to see them. This sets an example for them. Be open to admitting your mistakes. This is a tough one as leaders, but it's important. Be open to seeing your blind spots and asking others for input. Once you understand your strengths very well, it's good to put people who are opposite of those on your team so that you're able to be a more well-rounded team rather than putting people exactly like you on the team. Find somebody who can bring something else to the team. And finally, mentor. Find a mentor or someone with more experience in managing diverse teams. You know, just as we support our team members, we should be supported in our leadership style. So we need to seek out other managers of people outside where we work, who we trust, and we can emulate their exclusive leadership behaviors and skills. And so as I've come to the end of my slides, I just want to say, I know we talked about this, and we also joke about this if you're in my generation, because I believe I'm Gen X. My daughter calls me a boomer, but I'm not a boomer. But we're Gen X. There's often a lot of discord between us and the Gen Zs. But one of the things that I have learned is I've learned more about inclusivity from the Gen Zs that I hang around with than I have from my own peers. So be willing to, even in your vulnerability, be willing to not just look for somebody your age mate, but also look and be around people who are more comfortable with this type of thing. And like I said, with Gen Z, they're very open, they're very used. There's so many things that my daughter used to say, Mom, you know, you can't say that, or Mom, you can't do that. And now more and more, she's like, oh, okay, Mom, you become a much more open-minded. So I will leave you with that, and I thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you so much, Dua. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed your talk, and especially the part of inclusive language. I feel like so many of us are not really aware of the way we speak and how other people take to what we talk about and how we speak to them. So I feel like that was really important to talk about and touch on. I also like the part of language meaning acceptance. I don't think many of us thought of that as something that inclusive leaders need to consider. Thank you so much for bringing those things to mind for us. And we've come to our final panelist. We've been waiting. Emmanuel, are you on?
Oh, yes, I'm on.
Okay, so Emmanuel Osano is here. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for supporting us today. He is a passionate learning and development professional with over 5 years of experience in designing and delivering engaging programs that drive skills and development and performance improvement. He specializes in leadership development and is dedicated to creating a positive and inclusive learning environment where individuals can thrive. We thank you so much again for accepting the call. We're so excited to hear from you. You can take it away, Emmanuel. Yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Joanne, and thank you to all the panelists that have spoken before. As you've heard, my name is Emmanuel Osano. and I'm passionate learning and development profession. It's an area that I've invested most of my time since I started my career. And today I'm more than happy to talk about this topic of inclusive leadership. I haven't been able to prepare the presentation, but I have my talking points with me, and also most of the areas my previous panelists have already covered. So I'll try to make it brief and possibly talk on some of the areas that haven't been talked about. So when I heard the term inclusive leadership, first thing really came into my mind, and it's hard to talk about inclusive leadership without linking it to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I've heard other panelists have talked about this, but I just want to share a bit of background after doing my research. And the term diversity, equity, inclusion really came into place in most organizations after the BML, Black Lives Matter. So immediately we had that chant and conversation going on around the world. Most organizations really started this conversation of having diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what exactly does it mean to embrace diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in an organization? And diversity, by just looking at it, it's actually how different we are in the room. And it's very difficult to embrace diversity if we ignore the term inclusion, because inclusivity really brings the core of it and really brings that sense of belonging in the team. We've talked about team a couple of times. And here the core word is, how do we make the team feel the sense of belonging? They feel this is where they need to be. They feel they're actually respected and valued. And for us to do that as leaders, one of the core things we need to embrace is actually inclusivity. So diversity is not just enough, but incorporating the inclusivity bit is very critical. So how can we really embrace diversity and inclusivity in everything that we do? I've talked about fostering the sense of belonging. And if you look at a work perspective where everyone feels welcome, safe, and supported, by incorporating inclusivity, most of the participants or the group teammates will feel some sense of psychological safety, which it's been talked about, but just trying to define exactly what is psychological safety. Most team members are afraid of taking risk, but in a team where we embrace psychological safety, we'll see majority of participants feeling the courage to take risk and being their authentic self. And this has a lot of benefit because when you showcase your authentic self at work, there's more likely you'll be more innovative because you're not afraid of taking risk. You're not afraid of trying new things. And this is the value that inclusive leadership really brings to the team by unlocking the full potential or the full unutilized skills that each and every person has that has not been fully explored. Somebody's on mute. Okay. Yeah. So this is really key that we all need to embrace when you talk about psychological safety and other elements. Also, when we embrace inclusivity at workplace, we also build that relationship and trust amongst team members. And we all understand from the people's perspective, or just being passionate about people in leadership. I believe each and every person has a unique talent and they have something to offer on the table when given opportunity. But most of the time, due to fears, due to other underlying factors, those talent might not really come out. And also strengthening those relationships might really hard. And this could be due to cultural differences or background that we all come from. So we understand by building this relationship and trust through inclusivity, each person is able to invest time in strengthening meaningful relationship, strengthening collaboration. And we understand when we do that by bringing diverse thoughts in the team or in the conversation, we're able to come up with a concrete or long-lasting solution that has been able to factor in several elements and not just from one perspective. And this is something that we all can practice in our respective areas where we are. It doesn't need to be work. It can be even at your own place with your family, the people around you in your friend zone. Another element that I also came across when we talk about some of the effective strategies for inclusive leadership is actually active listening. And when you talk about active listening, I'm looking at it, how we all can embrace active listening as part of inclusive leadership. We've seen or we've heard statement where when someone talks, there are those people who listen with intent to question, with intent to interrupt, or with intent to speak. But imagine in a situation where you actively listen with an intent to understand the viewpoint and concern of different team members. And this can come in handy by practicing empathetic listening and trying to suspend any judgment that might come your way, and also asking clarifying questions and summarizing what you've heard, just to ensure you understand the other person who is talking. And by doing that, imagine if you're the person speaking and someone is practicing this active listening mechanism to you. There's that sense of being valued. There's that sense where you feel your voice is being heard. And that there's that sense where you feel you're being supported, even if this person who's listening won't really provide the solution. So by actively listening to understand, respecting this person, and also just paraphrasing what you've heard and asking clarifying questions, it's really key, because most time we all want to come out and share our ideas. And sometimes when given opportunity, not really everyone gets to listen to your point. So that's also very key. My previous presenter talked about inclusive communication and just being mindful about the word that we say. I totally agree, because words have power, and how we put it out, it can either harm or bring more value to the audience that we speak to. So I think fostering inclusive communication and the language we use, it's really key. So I won't really dive deeper into that. At the very beginning, I talk about it's hard to talk about inclusion and ignore diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Just to bring you back and try to offer a brief summary of this abbreviation and what exactly it means, to make you have a clear picture. So when you talk about diversity here, it basically refers to variety of background and experiences. From different regions, people have different perspectives. There are those who look at it from the race perspective, the color perspective, but it goes beyond color, race, and those elements. It even comes back down to different thinking perspective, different institutions we've all attended. It's beyond gender, it's beyond age, it's beyond religion. It's really big. And even looking at the panelists we have, it's quite diverse. And now there's another element that people also look at it, the equity bit. Equity is really key because it focuses on ensuring each and every person has equal access to opportunities and resources they need to succeed, regardless of their background. So equity is also key, and we can't really ignore it. And then coming into inclusion, which is really focused on the inclusive leadership. And this is about creating a welcoming and respectful environment where everyone feels valued, supported. Yeah, and it can happen through a variety of factors, including open communication, celebrating differences, ensuring everyone has a chance to participate. And as you can see, we may have diverse team, but if there's no inclusion, there's minimal chance for us achieving the objective of the team. And therefore, inclusion really, really sits at the center of it because it's also tied to belonging, which also embraces effectiveness of inclusive team or inclusive leadership. Just going down, and I wanted to share a bit, why is inclusive leadership so important? One of my previous panelists talked about in an organization where we embrace inclusive leadership, there's more likely that organization will enhance employee engagement and retention. And being someone who is very passionate about people management, leadership and development, when I hear the word engagement and retention in the organization, a couple of things really comes to me. Because most of the time it's hard to retain a good talent. And even if you look at the research, why people tend to leave the organization, culture is one of the factors. And if we drill down to culture, we'll be able to underline other elements, including things that I've talked about, including psychological safety, including inclusive leadership. So those things can really be a hindrance. So the reason why we all need to embrace inclusive leadership is basically to create a space where our team members or employees can feel valued, respected, and heard. And when we do that, they're more likely to stay in that organization because they feel this is a place where I belong. This is a place where I can showcase my talent. This is a place where I can thrive. And this can lead to higher productivity and lower turnover rates and more positive work environment while achieving the organization goals or the team's goal. It also really embraces or improve the problem-solving mechanism in a team. And I would like you to picture in a situation where we embrace inclusive leadership, and this can help really identify potential blind spots and biases in decision-making. Because most of the time biases come when we see things from one perspective. But imagine in an inclusive space where each and every person has a viewpoint and they're able to share their thoughts. Putting all these thoughts together can help us see things from a different perspective and problem solve effectively by coming up with long-lasting solution. And then something that is also very key, or the benefits that why we all need to embrace inclusive leadership. It actually strengthens brand reputation. And we all understand how brand is very critical. And here I'm not just talking about organizational brand, but even your own personal brand. We've had leaders who really embrace themselves as inclusive leaders. And that is a brand they've been able to work on because they've been able to embrace what it means or the key elements and intrigues that really fosters inclusive leadership. So organizations or leaders with reputation for being inclusive, they are more likely to attract top talent and potential customers. And this can lead to competitive advantage in the marketplace. So even you as a person, just looking at it in your own small circle, in your own family, in your own workplace, how can you really embrace inclusive leadership? And what type of brand would you like to build in actually building this inclusive leadership? Another element is actually, it fits into culture. And culture is not a one-time event. It's a daily thing. It's what we do on a daily basis. So inclusive leadership cannot be a conversation that we only have it one time or whenever there is a need, but it's something that really stays within us. We can't do away with it. We have to embrace it. And in everything we do, we ensure there's that inclusivity and it's visible in everything that we actually do, be it our work, be it our conversation, be it even how we write emails or how we write our reports. Just ensuring that all these elements have actually been taken care of. Now, I'm just trying to understand the qualities of an inclusive leaders and how those qualities will come out. So one of the qualities that you can actually depict from an inclusive leader is a leader who really promotes psychological safety. And these leaders, they care so much about who you are and the key talents that you bring on board. And they'll create an environment where everyone will feel comfortable sharing ideas and expressing themselves without fear of judgment. This will actually bring people to think outside the box and come up with ideas, innovative way that can really contribute to the discussions that are happening. Another qualities of these leaders is they really value diverse perspective. They're not quick to make judgment, but they would like to give each and every person opportunity in the room and hear their diverse perspective. And by seeking out viewpoints, it really encourages open discussion in the room. And the goal is actually to come up with a long-lasting solution or come up with idea that incorporate each and every person's viewpoint. And they also empower other people. These leaders really provide opportunity for all team members to contribute and actually grow when opportunity arises. And then lastly, some of the qualities, they really hold themselves accountable. They recognize their unconscious bias and actively work to create more equitable workplaces or environment. By recognizing your unconscious bias, you become self-aware and more aware about the things that might really affect your thought process, and try to be alert and work on them, ensuring they don't play out in your discussion or anything that you're doing. And as I wind up, I'm just reflecting, you as a person, what can you do to embrace inclusive leadership in your day-to-day engagement or moving forward? And it's important to know that inclusive leadership is beyond the diverse team. I think right now, since the conversation of Black Lives Matter, we've really embraced diversity. And the key is to ensure, how does inclusivity really plays well? And looking at a number of organizations, institutions, they've really even come up with policies that talks about, we have policies on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the key point is, how do we move forward from the policies and the documents we've developed to creating a culture where it's visible in the organization and everyone really lives by those cultures and values that have been put in place? Number one is making it a personal thing. I think change begins by you as a person, and therefore taking this important bold step and say, I, as Emmanuel, moving forward, I would like to embrace or put together and ensure in everything that I do, there's some sense of inclusive leadership or inclusivity plays in my discussion. That is a personal choice, and it will go a long way. So what we're calling for to do is to become more aware and embrace inclusion, not just diversity. Because diversity is about mix of people in a team, but inclusion is about creating a culture where everyone feels valued. And for us, when you talk about culture, it comes back to you as a person and not anyone else. So there's no external environment, external factors, but it's about personal development. And it's good to acknowledge that each and every person has biases. But inclusive leaders, they work to identify and challenge their own biases. So my goal is to have some self-reflection, understand what are some and how can you challenge those biases so that they don't play out when you're having conversation or when you're getting out of the comfort zone to speak with other people. And another element that we can all do is actually promote equity. Let's all promote equity. And this is whereby we all come out together and create a level playing ground where everyone has the same opportunity for success. It also is one of the initiatives that you as a person can step up and create this environment. And if all of us can really do that, we'll be able to create a culture where we see the visible and everyone really embraces that. I'll stop there. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to answer any question that comes in the chat box. Over to you, Joanna.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your talk. I hope you can all hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've learned something about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I didn't know how they were connected, but seeing how you've explained it, it seems like one comes after the other and the other. I think we start with diversity and then we come into equity and inclusion. Maybe am I right? Yes. Okay. So thank you so much for that. I've liked the part about empathetic listening. I feel like if for anyone who's ever talked to anyone, I think we've all had conversations, having someone listen to you and they ask you questions and they summarize what you've said, you really feel heard, you feel respected, you feel like what you've said is of value. And I feel like that's a really important point. So I feel you can now go into questions if anyone has any questions in the comments. And maybe while we wait for any questions, I have a couple of my own. Emmanuel has touched on being accountable, and I feel like accountability is very meaningful in driving inclusive leadership. So I would ask all the panelists probably, how do you recommend leaders be held accountable for fostering inclusive environments in their organizations, both in terms of their individual behavior or in terms of policies in the organization and the practices of this in these organizations? Anyone can answer. Emmanuel, do you have something to say about that?
So how leaders can be held accountable? Number one is they need to be open. And as a leader, if you have a team, be transparent to your team. And because the team members will really hold you accountable, create an open space where they can reach out to you or open your policy at any time. Share the objectives and the direction where you want your team to go and have a clear picture of where the organization is going. By doing really this, you are cascading the goals down to your team members, and your team members will be able to hold you accountable if you're not meeting those goals. So by holding the goals for yourself, it's not really sufficient, but having open and candid conversation with the team members and making it cascade this down and ensure everybody owns the goals that are there in the organization. So people won't just become doer because we see leaders really dedicated. And it's there. That has implication because they become doers. They only do what you told them to do. But imagine being a leader and sharing the bigger picture. How do these people understand the path and the goal where you want them to get? They become co-owners, and that brings sense of ownership in the process. And when they become co-owners and have that sense of ownership, they'll be able to hold you accountable with the timelines, course correct where possible, and ensure that all are in the right direction. John,
Sorry, Dua had her hand up, if she can go next.
Yeah, I think part of the issue with holding people accountable is that a lot of the times when we talk about DEI and especially inclusion, we speak about it and it's an afterthought. So it's like, it's kind of a buzz phrase right now. So people are like, oh yeah, we should be doing something about inclusivity. We should be doing something about diversity. But I think what needs to happen is it needs to become part of policy, and it's especially in organizations, from the way, because being excluded starts with where's the job being advertised? What is the language that's being used to advertise? The majority of times, if you say this job, it needs analytical thinking or something like that, some women may shy away from that. You know what I mean? Because they've been told they can't think critically or whatever. So at every stage of the hiring process, every stage of talent development, and management, etc., in succession planning, it has to be worked into the very fabric of a company, and that's how you hold it accountable. It can't be something that you just say, okay, who's going to deal with the DEI stuff? Okay, so they give it to Dua, and then it's like, all right, so there's a woman who's doing this, and we go on our merry way. We know we've checked the box. If it's a tick box exercise, then there's no way to be held accountable. If it's woven into the fabric of the vision, of the mission statement, of the culture, especially of the organization, then accountability will be there already, because you've said our values are inclusiveness, or are being inclusive. If we're not being inclusive, right there, we can say, okay, this goes against our value. But if it's not something that's brought to the forefront and taken with and done with intent, that's the word that I wanted to say, because a lot of times it's just these buzzwords come up. It's emotional intelligence, it's DEI. We'll see what the next buzzword is. All of these things are needed, but there has to be intent in how we do them. So that would be what I say is we need to, for leaders to be held accountable, they need to go back to some of their visions, their overarching vision, their mission statement, and etc. Go back and work inclusion into those very documents, into the foundation, and then go from there.
Thank you, Dua. Dr. Caroline, do you have something about that? Oh, she's not here. Sorry. Okay. Vincent?
So thank you. I want to appreciate the presentation by Dua. It was amazing, especially on language. And as well as I want to appreciate the presentation from my colleague Emmanuel as well. So for me, I want to say that I live in Kenya, and I see, even politically, I see policies being made to adhere to gender inclusivity. The biggest challenge I've seen is that there is no spirit behind those policies. They are there to see that we have something about inclusivity, but the spirit behind it. And I feel that is why we need to be very intentional on how we are raising the next generation of leaders. Because if they just build and adopt policies without the spirit, without intention, without the attitude, without them seeing the value of inclusivity, it is singing music it's like, washing, it's better in phrase. Itakuwa ni kuchezea mbuzi guitar. I don't know if everyone can understand that. It's a Swahili phrase where you have to, play music for a sheep and they won't dance. Because as much as we need the policies, do we have the spirit to implement them? Do we actually view each other as collaborators, as people who are of the equal measure when it comes to pursuing the vision, or are we just establishing policies for the sake of the checklist, as Dua has said? I think for me, the intention behind something is more profound than the something in itself. The foundation is very important. There are things we have influence over at the moment, and I feel for us to achieve inclusivity, we need then whatever we have influence in. For example, I have influence over my household. Therefore, I need to educate my household to uphold inclusivity. I run an organization. I have influence over it. Therefore, I should exemplify, I should become the best in class in ensuring inclusion in the process. Actually, I have a pretty amazing team. I work with ladies, I work with men. We serve every client. We have an amazing team that has inclusivity in it, and everyone has autonomy to run ideas. They question my ideas. I started the vision, but for me to achieve the vision, I need other people. If I have to achieve the vision the way I started it, then there's a problem with me as the leader to begin with. So I feel like our areas of influence, we need to implement whatever we've shared as your guests first before anyone else. And then those we have empowered to also implement the same. The problem is we want to change from the top, yet we can begin from where you are. Thank you.
Thank you. I've seen Dr. Caroline is here. She could tell us something about accountability.
Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the bottom line is just the level of leadership in different organizations. And accountability for leadership is very simple. It's an issue of results. It's an issue of outcomes. So where there is inclusivity or diversity or high levels of leadership, naturally the outcome is results, and the outcome is performance, and the outcome is wellness of the organization. But I think for me, the bottom line has to be levels of leadership and the ability for all of us to reflect on what is true leadership, because inclusion and diversity is just one of the aspects of leadership. So I think a bigger and wider debate has to become, what are the levels of leadership and what are the components of those levels of leadership? Because in an environment where there is true leadership, you find that there are different things that are working. And you find that some things are just obvious, things like culture, things like empathy, things like inclusivity, things like vulnerability, things like authenticity, things like motivation, inspiration, self-development. So you find there are so many components that are working in an environment where the levels of leadership are high. So the question then must become, what are the different levels of leadership that we should start preaching about? Because leadership is a container that holds everything. And unless the container is right, unless the container is well done, then even if we talk about the contents, it doesn't matter, because we have missed the foundation of where everything is coming from. And I'm really passionate about leadership because to me, it impacts everything. When you see something is not working, what's the problem? Is leadership. Anywhere something is not working, what's the issue? It's leadership. So it's a big discussion, a big conversation.
Thank you. I feel like those are really good perspectives about accountability and being transparent and having open conversations about inclusivity, and also just putting it inside the policies of organizations and making sure that every person at every level is aware that inclusivity is part of this culture, part of our practice is very important. Another question I would ask is, as leaders, as Dua has said, DIE and inclusivity are buzzwords right now. They're really trending, they're really making waves in every industry that there is. So as leaders, how would you recommend that other leaders, or how do you stay informed and continuously educate yourself about practices and emerging trends about inclusive leadership? And what are some of the resources that you use to be able to continuously learn? Because we've realized that it is a learning process, that it doesn't stop at, oh, we have a policy about inclusivity in our company. We need to continue to learn about it. So what are some of the ways that you as leaders learn about them, and what are the resources that you use? Dua, you could go first.
Thanks. I would say the first thing would be exposure. You know, a lot of times we want to learn about something, but we want to learn from the comfort and the safety of our own homes. Is being immersive and learning, you know, learning about it from the people who live it, who live the exclusions, who live the micro exclusions and microaggressions and stuff like that. I'm lucky enough as a leadership coach that I hear about this type of thing all day, every day. But it's also, like I said earlier, as I was finishing my presentation, a lot of my ideas on and knowledge on inclusivity is just been hanging out with the next generation, just talking to them and hearing, you know, their thoughts and their different worldviews from what we grew up, how we grew up, and, you know, all of that type of stuff. So it's about exposure and being willing to kind of get your hands dirty as a leader, you know, rather than living in an ivory tower where, you know, everything is just theory and stuff. It means you have to start practicing it. And that also means that's the vulnerability of, it means you're going to make mistakes. And so it means going out there and knowing that you're not going to know it all, and you're going to make mistakes, but you're a lifelong learner. So you're willing to learn, and you're willing to say, you know, I'm sorry, I did not know that that was offensive. So can you talk to me about it so I can know the way to do it better? I think that's really and truly is just constantly being willing to learn. And what I tend to see is people will imitate the characteristics and behaviors they see in their leaders. So if you are a curious, open, willing to learn things, the people around you will be curious and open. And it starts kind of a compounding effect, and, you know, it kind of like a domino effect of more and more people being open to learn. So, yeah.
Thank you. Would like to go next? Dr. Caroline, Emmanuel.
Okay, I can go next, and from my perspective is always questioning yourself. In terms of, for me, it always is, what is it that I don't know that I should know? This is something I'm always struggling with. What don't I know that I should know? This is a constant question for me. And also self-awareness from the perspective of, are you really practicing what you're preaching? The knowledge is good, the information is good, there's information everywhere, but the personal challenge is, are you putting it into practice? Are you genuinely mirroring it? Because, you know, as we are talking about it here, it's cliche now to talk about inclusivity, and you know, it's a big topic, but are we really open to being inclusive? And of course, even, you know, taking it a step further, of late I've been questioning myself even about all this talk about LGBT, whatever it is called, LGBTQ is another uncomfortable topic. When we talk about inclusivity, are you willing to consider, and this is my personal challenge, am I willing to consider that there are other perspectives, that there are other positions, you know, that there are other realities? Should we shut down uncomfortable conversations, you know, or should we look at it and say, look, are we willing to be flexible? So I really think for me, it's a continuous personal challenge. To what extent can I be flexible? Can I be open-minded? Am I willing to deal with the uncomfortable topics? And to me, that's a challenge.
It's true. It's a very uncomfortable topic, but it's important to ask yourself if you're willing to handle that uncomfortability of it. Emmanuel, Vincent, any of you can have an answer.
Yeah, I can that. One of my friends saying we need to have, as millennials, to have the older generation. That statement is agility and willingness to learn. We shouldn't be fixated with one way of doing things. The young ones should be open to learn from the older generation and vice versa. So I think just being open-minded and willingness to learn is really key. You don't need to practice, but that is very, very critical to just have the knowledge and know how to navigate that space.
Yes, thank you. Vincent?
I think for me, I think the person I can change is myself and the things I'm able to influence. That is the direction of the organization. If I'm a church leader, I have influence to share my insights. So for my personal growth, number one is to read and contextualize whatever I read to where we are, where we've come from, and where we are going. And number two is to educate, to share with my personal experiences, not sharing things that I've not experienced. That is why I am big on contextualization, so that we are able to, share information according to our culture, where we've come from, where we are going. Contextualization means if I was, for example, speaking to our brothers in the Muslim community where I am in Mombasa, I need to contextualize the conversation to that. And then it is also to intentionally change myself, transform myself, because the principles of life are the same, but the formula with which we achieve them in every industry changes. And also to be authentic with myself. To share my perspective, I need to be comfortable under my skin. The law of love says that love your neighbor as you love yourself. And also the last point is to know that it is not my responsibility to change Joanne, Emmanuel, Caroline, Dua, Radido, Emma, Mercy, or Linus. It's not my capacity to change them. My capacity or my role is to plant the seed. Transformation happens when they choose so, or God transforms them. So I shouldn't beat myself up if people can't adopt inclusivity. But I can do it for myself and where I have influence. But then my job is to plant the seed and do what I can from my area of influence. So that is how I view it. And also what Dua said, exposure is important. Like I said in one of the quotes, that your success as a leader is directly proportional to your continuous learning and development. So the more you expose yourself, the more you visit other cultures beyond your where you were raised, beyond where you were born, beyond where you studied. So that exposure is really important. It gives you a different perspective. Thank you, and back to you, Joanne.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Those are really wise answers, and I really like the idea of exposure and self-transformation. It really requires us as leaders to really look within to see if we can accommodate and we can make we can live under our skin and be ready to sit in uncomfortable conversations and places for inclusivity to work. Another question I would have, we have a question in the chat. I'll just read it out loud. How can an inclusive leader foster harmony and inclusivity within an environment characterized by diverse perspectives from various generations, considering the unique behaviors and attitudes of Gen Z, millennials, and others that may sometimes create discomfort? Anyone who's ready to answer that?
Maybe from my experience, I'll go back to the slide of rhino horns. I think these biases that we have you ever seen leaders who hate other leaders, yet they have never met them?
Yes.
I don't use hearsay to make decisions. Number two, I don't judge people based on my personal experience, exposure, learning and development, because what I feel is that we are all in different seasons of life. And our perspective is different. I have millennials working, like our social media is managed by a millennial. And the reason why we work best, it is because we have our objectives. So long as the objectives are met, I have no issue with you. So we have different management styles. There is management by objective and other management styles. I think for me, I've come to learn that for me to be a leader of any other generation, I need to sit and understand the person. I'm not working with a generation. I am working with a person. I'm not working with, for example, a Luo. I am working with an individual, not the culture or not the tribe. So I have learned to work with individuals, not tribes. I've learned to work with the person, not where they come from or the generation that they come from. Because you will find even in every generation, we have leaders who are better versions of themselves. So you cannot tie them to a generation or a tribe. So that is what I do personally. I work with the person. I don't work with the generation.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? You could just speak up.
Okay, I think for me, there are two powerful things that a leader can always rely on. And the first one is casting a powerful vision for the team. A leader is a vision carrier, and a leader has to know and understand how to build a powerful vision for a team. That is a strategy that a leader needs all the time in any difficult situation. Is the team aware? Can they see? Can they visualize your vision? And there's a technique to it, and it's a powerful strategy for a leader. The other strategy that is very powerful for a leader is what you call authenticity. It is okay for a leader to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to tell the young people I don't understand them. And actually to tell them they make me uncomfortable as a leader. Because I have come across young people and they just make me, I don't understand them. I don't understand what they are doing, why they are doing like this. I can't. So there's a way leaders should be vulnerable, and for us to say we are uncomfortable, and to go to the Gen Z and tell them, I don't know how to connect with you as a leader. Please teach me how to talk to you. Teach me how to understand you. Teach me how to work with you. Teach me how to relate with. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's what you call in leadership vulnerability. A leader is not what do you call it? A Superman or a Superwoman that you have every answer. Sometimes we don't have, and I can tell you myself, the young people, sometimes they bother me. I need some, but I can't, I don't know how people work like this. So be genuine, be vulnerable, and they will teach you, they will tell you, you know, this like this. So these are the two strategies I would recommend.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you have anything, Emmanuel?
Sorry, my thing went out for a moment. Could you repeat the question? I missed when you were saying the question.
The question is about how to foster harmony and inclusivity in an environment where there are diverse generations like Gen Z and millennials without causing any discomfort in the team or in the organization.
Okay, so for that one, I would say to foster a sense of community, I would say be willing to hear all sides. You know, I would say be willing to hear from all different types of people. Be open enough. Use that active listening part where you're getting perspectives on you know, the different things, and also you may have to lead in a different style. So if you were leading in a style where it was very top down, you may have to learn to be more collaborative in order to make sure that everybody has a chance to have their say and that everybody is contributing. Because it's not just an age thing. Sometimes there's even things with personalities, introvert versus extrovert. There's some people are neurodivergent, they learn a different way. Some people work great under pressure, some people have to plan it out. So there needs to be an environment where everybody feels that their strengths are accepted and liked. I think as an older generation, we bemoan Gen Z so much that they're always at the defensive. So they're always ready for us to be like, oh, you guys. And yet there's so much we can learn from them. And that's the humility that we have to actually say, okay, we can learn from them. And then to go back to what Dr. Caroline was saying, it's so important to sit in that uncomfortableness, to be able to be aware to say, this is making me uncomfortable. It's not something I'm used to. And sit with that uncomfortableness. Sometimes we have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and saying that, okay, this is not the way I would normally do things, but let me hear your perspective. Let me understand where you're coming from. It doesn't necessarily mean that at the end of the day, you do everything the way they want to. You're the final decision maker, but just letting them know that they have a place where they can speak. Nancy Klein has a book called A Time to Listen. And in it, she says that for some people, just being listened to is such a radical act. Just having a space where they can speak is such a radical act because often voices are suppressed. So we don't want, as this generation, and this is why in the beginning of my presentation, I joked and I said, I'm a professional auntie. I'm a professional auntie for a reason, because I've seen a lot of people, a lot of women my age, suppressing the voices of younger women. When they come and they have complaints, we say, oh, that's bad. You think that was bad? Ours was worse. This was worse. And rather than letting them be able to come and tell us what they're authentically going through. So that openness and sitting with being uncomfortable, I think, are two things that are going to be very, very important, and honesty. And like Dr. Caroline was saying, authenticity, be authentic. It doesn't mean we have to accept everything. Me listening to you does not automatically mean acceptance. It means I'm saying to you that I respect you enough to hear something, even if it's completely opposite to what it is I want to need. So yeah, it's about the respect level rather than rubber stamping everything that Generation Z says,
Yeah. Thank you. I hope, Linus, your questions have been answered. I think Dr. Caroline answered about strategies to establish. I would have maybe almost have 30 minutes left. Maybe my final question would be, I think there are so many challenges that we can come into when we're trying to establish and maybe create policies around inclusivity in teams and organizations. And I feel like I would ask all our panelists and maybe even the listeners in the audience, how, as leaders, what are some of the challenges that you may have maybe experienced while trying to cultivate inclusive cultures in your teams, in organizations, even in your homes? What are some of the challenges that you have been through, and what are the ways you handled them and addressed these challenges to deal with them and still be able to cultivate inclusivity? Anybody can go and speak up.
Can go first. Yeah, so going to the question that Linus asked, because that's one of the challenges that leaders are able to face. It's how do you really deal with this multi-generational team that come in place. The baby boomers, Gen Z, millennials, and it's really hard to understand them, especially when we're working together. Let's fight really hard to understand the humans, and all the generations that are there. Like one way to overcome that is only to where our research can and do proper research in terms of how those generations will be played out at workplace, understand what some of the traits and the values they bring on board. And then once we understand that, it's also very key to foster open communication, because we've done proper research, we understand how to show up, and we also avoid stereotyping them based on the generation, environment, age, or anything that comes, and try to open like communication and diverse communication styles, which will really make them feel being part of the team and not being seen as this categorized generation. Yeah, so I think that's one way we can, that's one challenge, and how we can actually counter attack that challenge.
Thank you so much. Anybody else?
I think for me, the biggest challenge has been that I've often gotten the statement that if we're, if men and women are equal, or if any two groups are equal, or, these age groups, then why do we need inclusivity? What is the need for it? Why are you yelling and screaming this? Why are you crying about this? And, that's always been a very interesting thing, where you see that the definitions between equality and equity don't always land with people. So getting people to understand that, and also getting people to understand that when we're coming to make things equitable, it doesn't, it's going to be uncomfortable, because it will mean that somebody will have to give up something that they historically had in order for others to have more. But that's the point of what we call here in Southern Africa, Ubuntu. I am because you are. I would do that because of the fact that we are here on earth together. So I'd be willing to give a little bit of mine to Joanne so that she can come up, rather than saying, no, it's all mine. So yeah, those are some of the things I would say are the challenges, is getting to people to understand why this is important, especially in a day and age where everybody's like, but men and women are equal. Why are you still shouting about inclusivity? Because it's not in the fabric of our societies, because it's not policy, because it's not in our legislation. That's why we can all say we're equal, but it does not necessarily mean that laws and society have followed. We're saying we're equal in an academic sense, rather than, even if you go to corporations now, you see the percentage of African women who are in leadership. So you can't tell me that the conversation should stop. But that's a huge challenge, where I get the pushback, like, oh, we don't want to deal with this because you guys are equal now. So yeah.
Then I think, just to add a little bit, my own experience is that, okay, policies are good, procedures is good, things that are written are good, but my own experience is that what is written and what is on the ground are two different things. And that happens to a lot of people, because people are so concerned about, ticking the box in terms of ISO certification, in terms of this and the other. So people have all these policies about equality and all this kind of stuff. But when you go to the ground and you see the culture of the people, you cannot document culture. You cannot, kind of legalize culture. Finally, it boils down to behavior. How do people behave in an institution? And you find that most of the times people's behavior is contrary to the policies and procedures of the organization. Yeah. So the most challenging thing for a leader in terms of getting people to have diversity and inclusivity is, how do you convince people to change their belief system? How do you convince people to change their behavior? How do you convince people to act in a different way? How do you convince people that the element of culture cannot be documented? The element of culture is how we treat each other, is who talks to who, is where are the cliques in the organization, is who can talk and who cannot speak in the organization. And therefore to kind of inspire people to have a different way of relating with each other. So policies, procedure, good, fantastic. Culture, different thing altogether. And this is very challenging for a leader.
Vincent, do you have anything to add to that?
I think, I don't know about my colleagues, but I want to say that leadership is difficult. It's not a walk in the park. In theory, leadership is easy in theory, but on the ground, leading people, starting with self, is a challenge. It means that you have to rescript yourself and then rescript others. So leadership for me is a big challenge, first to lead yourself. Secondly, I also want to say that it is tough to lead people who are fixed in terms of what they define as inclusivity. It's difficult to lead a fixed mind and a mind that believes that they are right. So it is difficult to lead such kinds of people. And then it is difficult to lead people because, as I had told you, it is difficult to change people unless they want to change themselves. So that I feel like, for me, the challenges I face as a leader are actually opportunities for me. There are opportunities for me to rescript myself, to become a better version of myself, because as much as I want to lead others, like Dr. Kara said, my example of how the quality of conversations I have, the quality of influence that I have, the inclusivity that I practice is more important than what my colleagues are practicing. Because then when I create a culture that is inclusive, it can influence others. I feel if I change myself, then I can change what is around me. So since leadership is difficult, especially leading grown-ups who have a different perspective, they have their own opinion, then the best person to lead is myself first. I need to have my self-awareness. I need to know what kind of a leader I am, what kind of a leader do I want to become, and then work on myself consistently. And by doing that, I will influence the people around me. First, beginning with my family. Second, my organization where I work. Third, my clients and my stakeholders. By the way I behave, by my attitude, by my mindset, and by the authenticity that I exude in everything that I do. That the person, for example, you find online, the person you're listening to at the moment, when you meet the same person in person, it's the same person who is growth-oriented, the way they do their work, the way they execute their work, it becomes influence. I feel that it is difficult to change people by just talking to them like a motivational talk, because at that point it is easy. But then when we are going to do the work, that is where the challenge comes in. So it means that I need to change me. I need to become a better version of myself in order to change the world around me. But leadership, to be honest, is not a walk in the park.
I totally agree with you, Vincent. It's not a walk in the park. It's quite difficult, and it all seems very easy. It seems very enjoyable, but it can be quite difficult to be a leader and to just walk that road can be very difficult. We're now coming to the close of the meeting. We have 30 minutes left. So I feel like I will ask the panelists just one more time if you have any final remarks to make as we come to the end. Maybe Vincent or Dua or Dr. Caroline?
I think I'll just say the encouragement I'd say to everyone is you don't have to get this 100% right. You just have to start and be open and authentic, and you'll learn from there. And you will make mistakes, and that's okay. Admit to them and learn from them. But I think why a lot of people shy away from some of this work is they're expecting that immediately it has to be 100% right. And the important thing is to just start.
Thank you so much. Dr. Caroline?
I think I want to echo what this Dua has said and first encourage being vulnerable. That is one of the steps to making progress, vulnerability. And that is also a personal understanding that you are flawed and you have some blind spots, and that is okay. To be flawed and to have some blind spots. So the idea of being vulnerable, acknowledging that it is not perfect, and you cannot make it perfect is just an important step for every leader to start on the journey of growth of leadership, the journey of inclusivity. And I believe that would be the first step. Just be vulnerable about it. And when you don't know, in my experience, leaders have been told not to say that they don't know. But it is okay to say that I don't know. And that is where to start. This is just what Dua has talked about.
Thank you. Vincent, any final remarks?
Thank you for the opportunity. My final remarks will come from a quote by C. Joybell. And C. Joybell says that in order to change the world, you must first change yourself. In order to have the right to see what is wrong in the world, you must first earn the right. Let me begin again. In order to change the world, you must first change yourself. In order to have the right to see what is wrong in the world, you must first earn that right through seeing what is wrong with you yourself. We do not become influencers, leaders, teachers through pulling on our better attributes and applying those better attributes to a broken world like a healing balm. Rather, we become influencers, leaders, and teachers in this world by performing within ourselves the purging that we wish to see take place in others. The very first place to change and bring inclusivity is within ourselves. If we become the examples and the case studies of what inclusivity looks like, that is a better way to preach than actually to preach. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Emmanuel has left for another session, so he won't be able to give us his final remarks, but we continue to thank him in absentia. Thank you so much to every one of our participants who has been here from the beginning or came in and dropped out. Thank you so much for joining. I'm not sure if Doso has anything to say or not. Doso, do you have anything to say as we come to the close? Okay, I think he is a little busy at the moment. So thank you so much again. I think we're ahead of time. I didn't want to take so much of our time even more. Thank you all for coming. I'm sure we've learned so much about inclusivity and where to start and what challenges we might face and how to carry ourselves as inclusive leaders. I feel we are all very empowered, encouraged, and really educated on how to go forward with this journey of inclusivity. And that is not just a buzzword, it's not just a cool trend at the moment, but it is a very important part of being human. And even as we climb our corporate ladders or whatever industry we are in, inclusivity is something we meet at every turn, and we should all make sure we are all empowered and all in the know about inclusivity. So once again, I say thank you all. I think I can say that we've come to the end of the meeting. Thank you so much again. Finally, I'll end with announcements. The SheLeads books are on offer. We have several offers at the moment that you can find on our LinkedIn page or at our website, that is at www.zionpublishers.com, where you can find some offers for the Women's International Day that are running from, I believe, up to Saturday. The offers will be going on. There are individual offers, group offers, and corporate offers. So you can go there and grab something for yourself and your friends. If you'd also like to be a part of this SheLeads project, we're working on other volumes. You can send an email to zionpublishers@gmail.com or info@zionpublishers.com. We can be able to talk about it and see how to include you or anyone that you know into the project, and as we continue to work towards empowering women in the world, not just Africa. I think that's all from me. Thank you so much again. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.